Hello and welcome back to Game Brigade. I am Bryan, and today I thought it would be a perfect time to review Wingspan. So Wingspan, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, published by Stonemaier Games and Jamie Stegmaier, has been one of my favorite games in my collection. And I thought, why not talk about this one? It's just interesting that I've never actually done an official review. So we are going to cover the overview of the game, basically how the game works, so you have a good running idea, and then I'll talk about what I like and didn't like about this game, as well as my final recommendation. So how is Wingspan played? Well, every player will have their player board, which have different types of habitats that birds can live in. We've got the forests, we've got the plains, we've got the marsh or water birds. Every location is thematic to where a bird can live based on where they would normally be found in the wilderness. With that, we're then going to be playing birds at different sectors, paying whatever prerequisites they may have, such as this hawfinch requires 2 grain, so we would have to make sure we've got 2 grain to play this bird. If we're going to play further down a row, we would need to make sure we've got the subsequent eggs required to play that bird. This, at its core, is an engine builder. So we are going to be playing birds to have some sort of abilities, either when they're played abilities, round end abilities, between turn abilities, and then when activated abilities. And these abilities are going to be synchronized together, hopefully, so players become more powerful, creating a system or strategy as they go along, utilizing the 3 different habitats. So we have 4 total actions, which are indicated here. We have play a bird. As I already mentioned, we would play a bird from our hand, placing into a matching habitat. Again, you have to follow whatever restrictions required for playing that bird. We have gain of food. This means you would be gaining food from the bird feeder and selecting 1. So we would select here 1, which would be our cherry here. And if we wanted to, we could discard a card from our hand to draw another piece of food from the feeder. Next is lay eggs. We will then lay eggs on any of our birds that have available spots. Every bird has an amount of eggs that can be laid on it, indicated here on the card. It'll also tell you what type of nests, with stars being wild, but every bird will have their indicated nests available for you. And then directly above that is the point scoring of how much that bird is worth in final point scoring. The final action that we can do is draw bird cards, where we could draw either one of the 3 cards that's shown to us here on the menagerie, or we could take a random card from the deck. Every action syncs and works well with each other, basically forcing players to have to do one of the actions in sequence to do something else. If I want to play a bird, I have to have food. If I want to play a bird as well, I might need eggs later in the game. Once I played all my birds, I'm going to have to draw bird cards. So everything will be syncing with each other. You're going to have to figure out the strategy of how much you invest in each category. Players are also limited to the certain amount of actions. We will all start with 8 total cubes, but this will go down as the rounds happen. It's kind of an interesting element of Wingspan. For every round that is completed, you will take one of your cubes and place it on the scoring track for the round end scoring. That will effectively remove one of your actions for the subsequent turn. So round 2, we only have 7 actions, and then 6 actions, and for the final round, 5 actions. It does make it a little bit more stressful, or puts a little bit more pressure on your final actions as you're going down, but you are definitely more powerful because you have more actions to play with. So that's basically the sequence of play. Players are going to be playing cards from their hand, placing them into regions that they're able to fit in, and then triggering their activated abilities when they take an action. So for example, here we would get 2 food. This would come over here. We would do his activated ability. This is a blue ability, so it's a round end ability. The hawfinch would do his ability, and then the final action would just rest there at the end. Players will continue doing this until you've gone through each round, scoring additional bonus points for each round. They could be a wide variety of different types of bonus points, from having the most amount of birds to having eggs on birds with bowls. There's a whole bunch of different variety there. And then this is actually double-sided, so if you want to play on the more competitive side, you can flip it over, and it's a more competitive version with the green side. So either way, it's effectively the same thing, where players are going to be trying to reach different goals. And then at the end, we will point salad scoring there. I don't know what I did with my scoring chart, but there's a whole chart which tracks how many eggs you've got on birds, how much food you have on birds or in your supply, how many birds have you tucked behind predators. There is come on, just tuck under there. There's a whole bunch of different strategies that players can utilize or use to try to score as many different points as they get to the end. So that is effectively the overview of Wingspan, but let's talk about what I liked about Wingspan. First off, the engine builder of Wingspan is very clean. And actually innovative as well. I really like how simple it is to be able to understand, to take your cube, place it in the furthest most right, take whatever available action is there, and then move it along doing the subsequent actions. They're simple, it's easy to do. The iconography of the game is very simple once you figure it out. The eggs mean the eggs, the dice mean the dice, the cards mean the cards. It's very simple. And within Stonemeier's average game system, they have their wild system for wild resource. Seems like they use that in a lot of their games, so it's nice to see that being carried through with a lot of their systems. Very much appreciative of the iconography and the way the engine system is built here. It gives players a lot of different ways to strategize their systems in terms of how do they want to win the game. They might come up with a system like my last game that I played, where I said, I'm going to play 0 birds in the forest, and I'm going to try entirely playing birds in either the plains and the water, to try to see if that would be a system that might be competitive. I do like that there are strategies that you can do. In fact, we've had players who decided they were just going to play big, expensive birds that had all 8 points, or something that was a lot of points in terms of their overall scoring. So less worrying about their abilities in the engine and more focusing on just brute force pointing. I really do like that there are a lot of varieties in terms of the strategies involved. With that, though, it can be difficult to realize a strategy if you want to try something, because of the way the deck is so large in terms of the variety of different cards, and the way those cards are drawn out to you. You might do what I did, where I said to myself, I'm going to try this strategy, but it's going to require me to still get food in some way. So I'm going to rely on birds that somehow generate food for me, such as this hawfinch, which whenever I activate him, he can potentially get me wheat from the supply. This is a strategy, but if I don't get these kind of cards within this, I could hamstring myself, and obviously I would not be able to do this strategy. I would have to alter it. Not a problem of the game necessarily. It's just something to be aware of, that certain strategies might be difficult. With that, though, I do want to talk about the bonus cards. You will be given a bonus card at the start of the game, which will give you types of systems that you can also go for, in terms of these are points that are bonuses that we can try to reach for. So diet specialists, birds with a food cost of 3 food. For example, this golden eagle has 3 food. So we'd have to target birds like this, but again, same situation. The deck is so large. What if I'm not finding those type of birds, or I'm not drawing those type of birds? There are situations where if you're trying to rely on these systems and not just kind of flowing with it, it can be a bit of a frustration. The other thing that I just truly love about Wingspan is the overall aesthetic and art of the game. And in fact, this is going to put 2 of my points together. First off, the art is absolutely incredible. They use some sort of watercolor design feature to really highlight and showcase the birds in a beautiful light. I am not an aviator type person. I don't love or appreciate birds as much as I think I should. But playing this game really does and show you the variety, the beauty of different types of birds in our regions. I do have included in this review the European birds expansion, and so in the bottom corner they will tell you a region of the planet where that bird is most likely found. I have not played the newest expansion, which is the tropical Pacific Island expansion, which I would love to play. I haven't had a chance to pick it up or add it to my expansion or to my collection, but it does also alter a little bit of the board state. So that's one of the other reasons we haven't picked it up, because I do love this system so much. With the art, though, in terms of how beautiful the art is the overall component feel. To understand that this is a base retail version of the game, you're getting these beautiful eggs to play with, the bird feeder, the dice is a high quality dice. Heck, even the appendix and rule book give you a high quality feel that this is not a game to take for granted in terms of the quality. This, in terms of value, you are getting a premium product at a great reasonable price. And I love that when we're able to pick them up like that. The final thing that I really want to highlight is just overall how clean, again, the system is. I talked about this a little bit in the overview. The iconography is very easy to learn. The birds are fairly clear to understand. And overall, the system that is presented here is overall easy to understand from a high level. So with that, let's kind of talk about some of the things that I didn't care for or have noticed in subsequent playthroughs. I am mixing up my berries. We don't want to do that. That I've noticed in subsequent plays, because I've played this game a lot, where maybe later in the game, your experience, this could potentially affect your enjoyment. One of the things is the final round of play, your fourth round, where you have 5 action cubes left. I have found that most people, no matter what type of system they have built in terms of an engine, which they have been utilizing for the first 3 turns, 3 rounds, really enjoying that engine, the final round becomes more of a race to how many eggs you can lay across your birds. Because eggs are worth 1 point each, you generally are going to have about 9 or 10 birds played. One of the easiest ways to rack up points is just to keep laying eggs and scoring points in every round for your final 4 or 5 turns, just laying eggs until you have no more eggs available to lay. That unfortunately removes a little bit of the agency in terms of what players should be doing. I also don't like the fact that it kind of takes away from the aspect of what we want to do in terms of really building our engine and experiencing the game. And I have seen, because of that strategy, a lot of players focusing on the plains habitat as their primary habitat where they're going to live, because knowing in the 4th round, they are just going to try to target all of their actions and their combos in here as they're laying eggs on all their other birds as well. So that is something that maybe it becomes too metagamed, too gamey at that point. I didn't experience that again in my first few plays, but as you learn the system, you learn how the game wants to be played optimally. It is unfortunately a track that I've seen repeated multiple times now in multiple plays. This is also a game that feels like it should be a Gateway Plus game. Gateway is a game that I would use as a definition of a game to introduce people to the board gaming space, someone that might be coming from the Hasbro Monopoly type games. Maybe they're just a step above that, and maybe they played Catan and they've understood more gaming. Wingspan I would consider a Gateway Plus, or maybe kind of in that border between a Gateway and a Gateway Plus game. A game that should be inviting to players. It's obviously available at local targets. It's going to be sold to people as a gateway game. Can come off as a bit intimidating for new players because of the amount of points scoring allowed. As I mentioned, your birds have points. Your eggs are worth points. Tucked cards are worth points. Food is worth points. Your end game scoring is worth points. Everything is worth points. And to remember and keep track of all those things can be confusing or difficult for players. So while I do think the overall system is easy, and I don't necessarily find myself having difficulty with it, when I have introduced this to people who were in that gateway stage or ready to take the step into gateway gaming, they were frustrated with the amount of things they had to keep track of throughout the game, the cards in their hand, the points that they're going to be getting and whatnot. I don't necessarily know if that's basically the marketing point of Wingspan and in terms of where they're positioning themselves, but I would say it is a little bit more intimidating than it would lead on in terms of what the game is basically presenting itself to be. The other aspect that I would say, and this is a minor nitpick in terms of my enjoyment, is the player board is very easy to understand when you're looking at the 3 actions: gain food, lay eggs, drop bird cards. But the board also has this play a bird action at the very top. I've had multiple people not understand when I'm trying to reference that this is the 4th action. And then on the side here, we have additional actions that are available if you have filled up the final column. They give you more food with an additional action. These are almost always missed, and I have to keep reminding players to look at the sidebar here because these are additional actions when you filled up the final column. I've had players who thought once this was all filled up, there was no more ways to get bonuses because they thought they had to take the action here. So it's just board layout. It's it's hard to say because the way the board is designed, it's the only real place that kind of thing can fit. The final nitpick, I guess I would say, and this is just based off of personal play experience in terms of what I've heard multiple times, and especially it's usually during final round scoring, is that the bonus cards are a bit too obtuse sometimes for people to understand. Generally, you'll receive 2 cards at the beginning of games, you read them, and you pick one, you put the other aside. Almost always, I find that people pick the one that is they clearly can understand because the other one might be too hard to understand, or it might be confusing. For example, one will say play cards with brown bird powers. That's easy to understand for a player, but if a player is new, they might not reference what that means. Or cards that have colors in their name, or body parts. There's a card called something like the titmouse or something. Is a titmouse a body part? Is that considered a body part? I mean, that's an actual question. So it sucks that you have to go to like Board Game Geek to find the definitive list of what birds count for body parts or what birds count for colors, because it's more difficult in terms of understanding in the space of the game. So not the biggest issue. I'm just saying in general, I have seen that players have been more confused than not with some of these types of scoring. But overall, not that big of a problem. So what are my thoughts and what is my recommendation for Wingspan? Wingspan was a great introduction game for me and my collection. I loved the game. My family loves the game. It's one that I have found myself growing distant of, only because, as I mentioned in the nitpicks, how metagamey the game can become, where players and the player groups can figure out the most optimal strategies and ways to play the game, which kind of removes kind of the enjoyment of trying new things and whatnot. And that might just be a personal issue for me, but that's, again, from, the reviews coming from my perspective. I do recommend Wingspan, and if I were to give this an official seal, this would be a recommendation from Game Brigade. The game is great, and I would tell anyone that is looking to pick up a Gateway or Gateway Plus game that Wingspan could and should be in your collection, at least for now. You might find yourself, just like me, outgrowing it, but I think that's okay. You will get plenty of plays out of it before that happens. We have probably played this game over 15 times. I know just the digital version alone, I've played that one at least 10 times. So I've gotten a lot of love out of this board game, and at the price point of usually around $50 US, it's an incredible deal, and I recommend anyone going out there and picking it up. So that is my overall final thoughts for Wingspan. A great overall game, fun, great components, beautiful art, educational in a sense that you're learning about birds across the U.S., and it gives you a sense of what the birds do. I love playing this with nature sounds on in the background. We usually put some bird sounds on, just bringing us into the whole realm. And I think I remember the online version. I wish this was something for the real version. When you play it, it would even tell you the little flavor text in the bottom of what the birds are. So that's my review. Wingspan, highly recommended for me here at Game Brigade. A game that has been in my collection from the inception. I hope it stays. My wife would probably kill me if I ever said I was going to sell it because it is one of her favorites. I recommend you picking it up if you haven't yet, or at least trying it somewhere. This is Bryan from Game Brigade. I will talk to you very soon.